But, gee, the amount of casualties that are adding up now, and we're still in the month of January. I mean, St Kilda dropped a couple of bombs on their members yesterday, some news that we weren't aware of. Essendon, much the same. We know the Blues have been in the wars. Richmond provided an update yesterday to say one of their draft picks is Josh Smiley's going to be out of action, and on it goes, Kane.
It is fascinating. You and I spoke about this with Sam Walsh and the Blues, and the Blues' combative nature, as Harry's describing there early on throughout their pre-season. Each club would have different views on this, but from my experience, coaches and the high-performance staff, if they butt heads over one thing, it is just that. It is how much can we get in the players. Coaches want more. High-performance staff go, hang on, got to be a little bit cautious here, a little bit careful. Then coaches get angry. I've seen visible arguments about that, and that's a healthy thing, and that's what the role of a strong high performance manager is, to make sure your players are prepared without tipping over the line. So I mean, each club will do it differently. We've heard stories from those who have been coached by Ross Lyon around protecting the best players. Like, just make sure you don't run into revolt. Make sure you look after him. So that would be his philosophy. But if that is still Ross's philosophy, which I'm assuming largely it is, and he spoke about that with Max King when he popped his shoulder a year or so ago, you look at their injury list and you go, well, Hunter Clark, Liam Henry, Marshall, Philippou, Howard, Paddy Dow, some of those unavoidable. Understand, Paddy Dow's got blisters, he gets an infection in his knee, nothing you can do about that. Training loads aren't going to solve that. But others maybe. You look at, I think you need to look after players like Sam Walsh at the Blues so he doesn't tip over the edge. I think you need to protect some players from themselves. And I was just looking up the NFL contact training rules, and they've actually mandated that you are not permitted to go full contact training in OTAs. So this would be the pre-season version of the NFL season. Full pads and full contact are not permitted during OTAs. Full pads and full contact are only permitted during training camp. Players can only participate in 14 contact training sessions during the regular season. This is now mandated into the league to protect players from themselves, because clubs are always going to push the line. So does it get to the point where, and we've seen this come in, like in the AFL used to be able to do sort of boxing training, not allowed to do that anymore. Does it get to the point where it's almost at crisis levels with the injuries that we've got at the moment, players dropping like flies? You're right. I think this seems to be more significant than it ever has been. I don't know. Does the AFL and the league and the Players Association, the players get together and work out how they can protect themselves a little bit more?
Yeah, off the text, what does Chris Scott do about pre-season? He seems to manage players the best. But the other part of it is you don't get all the information. Like, the clubs are choosing to release this information at the moment. Some of it's unavoidable. Like, if people are going along and they're not seeing Rowan Marshall on the track and Mataz, questions will be asked, so they're painted into a corner. But sometimes I think they will get away with it for as long as they can. Now, I'm not saying this is happening at the Brisbane Lions, but they're a little bit out of sight, out of mind up north, and they're in a situation where they've played a month longer than a lot of other teams. So they're on the same runway now with a month less to prepare. So what does it look like for them when you've got not only players potentially being injured in preparing for a new season, but they're coming in injured? They've got to have surgeries and cleanups. This caught my ear. This was Dane Zorko. Goodness knows how many pre-seasons the Zorko's seen. He was talking about preparing for a new season and match simulation sessions on SENQ. If I look at the guys that were injured last year, there's Coleman, Duday, Gardner, McCarthy, McInerney, right? Now, they were all warehoused and operated on, but are them all? Like, I mean, they might have goodness knows how many surgeries that they've had to get done, cleanups and the like, and understandably, they're not ready to go yet. It's the 29th of January, so the level of cramming that they're going to have to fit in, and then how much dice rolling happens up at the Gabba to get ready.
Yeah, well, and that's where they earn their money, don't they? These high-performance staff and the coaches. A little bit easier, I reckon, when you've got a pretty established group who's been there and know that they can win a premiership from fifth. So the start to the season, like last year, wasn't as important. And that may be the way that they manage this. I mean, they're on March the 6th, Brisbane.
Yeah, should they be? Like, I know you can't have your cake and eat it too. They want to be part of opening round. But, I mean, like, they're the last to play and then they're the first to play.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's ideal for them. Like, they would love an extra week, no doubt about that. Not much they can do about it. And they'll get a bye. Haven't looked at their schedules in depth. They'll get a bye at some point when other teams keep playing, which will be very beneficial for them. But they only need 23, 24 ready to go. Like, they don't need Tom Doedee ready to go now. They just don't. They don't need Oscar McInerney to go now. They can probably manage a little bit because their list is so strong with the depth and players coming back. They need 24, 25 fit players who are prepared and ready to go, and clearly that's what they are managing. It honestly, it's fascinating to me because I just rate the preseason so highly. I'm just a firm believer in very rarely will a player have a good season if they don't have a really strong preseason. I mean, there's the odd exception to that, but it's going to be really difficult for Filippo to have a strong season with no preseason, particularly at his age.
Yeah, that's a shame.
Just Rowan Marshall, like I look at, and you're right with the information, like I look at the Saints injury list, it says Rowan Marshall 5 to 8 weeks. If Rowan Marshall is back within 5 weeks, honestly, I'll run around this studio nude. It's just not going to ever happen that he's going to miss 5 weeks. So that's just...
Hope it doesn't now.
That's just blatant rubbish from St Kilda to suggest that Rowan Marshall...
Be conservative, St Kilda.
Would be back in 5 weeks. As if Rowan Marshall was going to be back in 5 weeks with what he's going on. So why do they even put that on there? So, yeah, you're right. Clubs don't give us all the information, and that needs to be cracked down on. There's no doubt about it. But it's a fine line, and the best and most experienced clubs are usually the ones that get it right.
And then there's other clubs that are, North have 2 players that couldn't play tomorrow, so there's double 7-6. Kyle, I think North are doing that. This is in regards to looking after players in particular, with George Wardlaw, with himself describing his training as the old man's schedule. We had a laugh about that the other day. And off the text, who at Essendon is on the injury list? Well, the Bombers released an update announcing that Jordan Ridley'd suffered that setback, of course, with the hamstring strain. Jai Caldwell, they had an update on him. Ben Mackay, Alwyn Davey, Harry Jones. And then the name that jumped out to you yesterday was Nick Cox. And the only mention in the update for Cox was slowly increasing his loads after a concussion just prior to the Christmas break.
Yeah, I gave my thoughts on Nick Cox and got myself into a little bit of trouble. I've only ever been called by the AFL twice in my broadcasting career. Once was something I said about Toby Green in relation to some unfair treatment that I thought he was getting from the umpires, and I had to apologise for that. And the other one was my thoughts on Nick Cox, where there was an incident which resulted in a concussion. And I said on Footy Classified, I showed the incident, and I said, look, if this type of incident is going to result in a concussion, then essentially I'm concerned that his body may not be up to the demands of AFL footy. Now, I don't know how he has received the latest concussion, but...
I do, by the way. But hang on, just park that. I can give you an update on Nick Cox in a moment because I spoke with Essendon. But when the AFL ring you, what do they say without giving away chapter and verse?
No, well, understandably, issues around concussion are sensitive. And if players feel like... The AFL are fine about it, actually, but if players feel like they are getting shamed for going off the ground and getting checked for concussion and people are going to call it out, I understand that that's not what we want. So I just tried to explain it, and when I made the first point, I probably wasn't clear enough on what I was saying, which was on me. So I clarified that. But the incident that resulted in that concussion would happen 20 times a game. And if Nick's body isn't sort of robust enough to be able to take those hits and take those knocks, and if they're going to result in concussions, then I've got some concerns for him. Now, you can tell me how the latest one happened, and it may be legitimate, but yeah, I've got some fears for Nick that his body isn't prepared well enough to withstand the hits and bumps and bruises that you are going to take in this game.
All right, so this is from the Bombers, just on this player. Nick Cox suffered concussion symptoms at training just prior to the Christmas break when his head made contact with the ground as he was being tackled. He was slow to recover in the initial period, but pleasingly has been able to gradually increase physical activity symptom-free over the course of the last week. Will continue to be guided by the symptoms with his progression, as we are in all concussion cases. So that's where it sits with him. Thankfully, it looks as though he's making some progress now, so
but
hopefully
it's
not too far away.
2 in 6 months.
It is. But if you're tackled and your head hits the ground, well...
No, not much. How many weeks for the sling tackle did the teammate get?
Not sure. But yeah, that's where that one sits at the moment. So It's I think it's a space that, look, and people are texting in saying, are you guys serious? This happens every year. This is a Groundhog Day topic of conversation, but maybe every year it increases. I don't know. I feel like we've got a lot of players. There's still a lot of preseason to go, and we've got a lot of guys now who are in real danger of missing round one, are going to miss round one, and are getting injured at training, collision or soft tissue as clubs, rev the engine to get ready. Just on the Premier, Kane, the Lions quickly, given we touched on them, and given they are on the high wire really with getting ready, given now it's been 2 years in a row, they've actually, just having a look, they've played 4 weeks longer and then a week earlier the last 2 years. So I think they'll be like most clubs. They'll release an injury update in the not-too-distant future. I think the plan was always for them to start games and match simulation in the first week of February or by the end of that first week of February. And a lot of those guys I read out, so a lot of those knee and shoulder guys from last year will be ready in the next week or two, but some won't be. And they would know that they're not all going to be ready for round zero. It's a long, long season, so they won't be rushed into playing anyone come round zero. So really, it's maybe fine physically, but it's going to be that mental, energy aspect that's going to get them through the year. So it'll be fascinating to watch how they play.
I think they can manage. They're completely different to a side like the Western Bulldogs, to me, who need to start on fire. We're really hot and bank enough games early so that you get yourself in a position where you're not storming home, fighting and scrapping for a final 8 position, but more importantly, a final 4 position for the Bulldogs. Brisbane can sort of manage themselves into the season. They won the premiership winning 14 home and away games last year. You just got to get themselves to 14, 15 wins, and they'll have the confidence that they can do it and do it on the road if they need to. Just their link to Oscar Allen, Kautumi's report on afl.com.au around the West Coast captain, free agent, had a lot of injury concerns last year, but his 2023 season was just enormous, 53 goals in a side that won 3 games and one of the better contested marks, if not the best contested mark inside forward 50 in the league with Jesse Hogan, I would say. My question to you is, how can Brisbane fit Oscar Allen into their salary cap? Now this, and I don't want to continually speak about this is the exact reason that frustrates me with player wages not becoming public, because the skepticism that comes in with a link to Oscar Allen like this, I actually physically can't work out how they could fit him into the salary cap. You look at it. Andrews, Starcevic, even Payne's got a long-term deal. McCluggage has got a multi-million-dollar long-term deal. Hipwood's got the same. They've just signed Rayner. They've got Lockie Neal on huge money. They've got Dunkley, who's a recruit, on big money. They're going to have to pay Levi Ashcroft when his first contract expires. That'll be in the time Oscar Allen comes in. They got Logan Morris, who's going to need a pay increase. They got Oscar McInerney, who's one of the best ruckmen in the game. They've got some younger players coming through in Fletcher and the other Ash. It would absolutely blow my mind that Brisbane could even consider paying Oscar Allen $1.2, $1.3 million, which he's going to get, and fit him into the salary cap. How could they even contemplate this?
But what does it cause you angst? Because if they can, they can. I mean, they're not going to go in with it over the cap.
Because
it's
unhealthy. It's unhealthy that we all go, Geelong have been linked to Matt Rao. And then the speculation starts. Well, wouldn't it just be easier, far easier, if we could see, okay, well, Matt Rao fits on that wage into that salary cap, and that alleviates any of the angst. There is not for 1 second that I believe Brisbane could fit in Oscar Allen into that salary cap.
But we don't need to spend any time getting caught up in it, because obviously they can. So let's play the game then. So Joe Danaher's off the books, right? Zorko's going to retire soon. Gardner's going to retire soon. There's going to be countless other retirements over the way. And at the risk of repeating myself, maybe the one benefit with these long-term contracts is you can shuffle the money around. Yeah. So who's to say they're not going to move contracts back, move contracts forward?
They would have to
front
do
end
that.
Oscar Allen, back end.
We should be privy to that information.
Should we?
Yeah, 100%.
Or should we just know that?
No. We shouldn't, because you've seen it. Everyone speculates. Everyone has conspiracy theories. Everyone speaks about Cotton On and Morris Finance. That's the reality. Like, do you not, when Chris Scott is, and it's different because it's not salary cap related, but when Chris Scott is an ambassador for Morris Finance, do your eyebrows not get raised?
They do.
Yeah,
Yep,
well, there's
they
my
do.
point. So,
But have you got no faith in the AFL that they would ticket? Like
No,
none.
I'm
So
sure-
you
I'm
think
sure-
it's that easily gamed that they can go out and get?
no, I just think that it is unhealthy that is our initial thought. Now, I'm not suggesting anyone is dumb enough to cheat the salary cap. It just wouldn't happen.
What would Joe Danaher be getting paid? What would he have been getting paid?
What? Wouldn't be.
Surely
it wouldn't be what Oscar Allen's going to get paid.
Yeah, but then factor in a guy like Dane Zorko potentially
Yeah, but I
retiring in
think
the not
Dane
too
Zorko's recently redone his contract on a 1-year deal. Like, they're not going to be silly enough to pay a 35-year-old big money. But then you look at the youngsters bursting through. Like, Berry would be on good money. He had huge offers to go elsewhere. We know Rayner's offers. We know McCluggage.
Charlie Cameron's there. Have you mentioned him? Yep.
Even Duday.
Harris Andrews.
Even Duday got the 5-year deal to go. He's not going to go for peanuts. Like, it's just blows
That's the
my
length.
mind.
You just don't know what they're getting paid.
What's Ashcroft,
and when they're
what's
getting
Ashcroft
paid.
going to command?
Will?
The Norm Smith medalist. Like, that's going to be $1 million plus.
Yep.
In
time.
So, you know what's easier?
Or is it?
You know
Or
what's
is it?
easier? Just to tell us what everyone gets paid. And we'll all move on.
Easier
and
for
then-
you.
And then these discussions we can have with the full information right in front of us.
Easier for you. Some feedback for you from the Brisbane Lions perspective. You're overlooking that many of the players at the Lions have already chosen to be there, either via trade, Duday, Cameron Neal, etc., or father-son, Ashcroft, Fletcher, etc., so they're happy to take unders to stay. Helps too that they are successful. Of course, why would you want it to leave?
No, I understand that, but you still got to fit everyone in. And there's a level that players are happy to play for less, but that level only extends so far. Like, you know, Lockie Neal is not going to play for $600,000 when he's a $1.2 million player. The gap will be somewhere in the middle. Lockie Neal probably plays for $950. But when you've got 7 950s, it all adds up. And I know what's Oscar Allen worth as a free agent. The big money offers coming for free agent forwards are extreme. We've seen what Aaron Norton got. We've seen the offers for Hugo Hagen. Like, all of them, they're.
But if he wants to go and he wants to win a premiership and he wants to be successful, then he's not going to price himself out of that opportunity, is he? So it would be a negotiation if it even got to that. For all I know,
So
he
you
might
don't
be completely
question at all how Brisbane could fit him in. You just go, no, oh, it's all right. I trust him.
Yeah. You've got trust issues clearly in the whole system.
It's not a matter of trust, but I just go, how are they? How does this team have the same salary cap that
But they do, don't
St
they?
Kilda, 100%, St Kilda has? But I would like the information as to, okay, well, how's this team managing it so well?
Well, I'll
and
ask
how
it another
is
way.
my team managing it so poorly?
I'll ask it another way. Should clubs, because they do this all the time, should clubs, question without notice, before the question without notice, be allowed to rejig the contracts? Like, should they be allowed to change the contract? So if you get a guy in on big money, should you be able to shuffle it around later on to fit another one in?
I mean, that's been happening for so long.
It
So
has.
I've got
It
no
has.
issue with that because that just gives you the bit of flexibility that you need for unforeseen circumstances.
That's
Like,
how
you
they
may-
attract big free agents.
Yeah,
though.
or you may have a heap of injuries to players on guaranteed contracts. That means you have to pay players who are on match payments, and that sort of blows out your salary cap. And all of a sudden, you're not foreseeing this, so you go over and you go, oh, "Gee, we're going to have to get Scott Pendlebury to take, 200 less this year so we can fit everyone in." That was happening when I was playing. So no issue with that. But I just don't see any disadvantage to having these wages public so that we can see how Brisbane have even got the audacity to try and fit Oscar Allen into this salary cap.
All right, if you've got a question without notice, we'll rip into that next. 0433 98 11 16, all on the 40 Winks temper. I'm trying to park them as we go. They're flying through. The difference is temper. If you want to ask it over the blower, you're more than welcome to do that. The open line is open, 1300 736 736.
Compare your current energy prices to Sumo and learn what you can save.
Lindsay, who's out in Somerville. Lindsay, you got a question, maybe even a statement concerning the Brisbane Lions. Morning to you.
Yeah, good morning, mate. Look, I only heard the end of your conversation, so it's pretty obvious that the Joe Danaher money is there, but also it could be Zorko's last year. A number of players could be retired. Darcy Gardner, we don't know what's going to happen with him.
Yep.
And there's a lot of fringe players like Dev Robertson, who wouldn't be on huge money, but are probably on 300 or 400, that'll be leaving as well, are going to be squeezed out. So I think there's going to be, money available there. Also, we don't know whether people like Andrews had front-ended contract and Lockie Neal. So I don't think you should be questioning their integrity.
No, that's the point I'm making. Like your statement, we don't know. We should know. We should know.
All very simple there. Lindsay's just explained it.
Not
all tied up in a neat little bow there, Lindsay. Thank you, mate.
Zorko's not on big money. He's done a 1-year contract and he's 35. Darcy Gardner, please. He's hardly going to touch the sides of their salary cap. Dev Robinson is the name being mentioned. Good luck fitting McCluggage, Rayner, Andrews, Cameron, Duday, Oscar Allen, Ashcroft, Neal. Good luck, Berry. They're the names that are going to make a difference. But Lindsay's point there is we don't know he's such and such has got a back, and we should know. We all should know.
Yeah, and look, just to explain further, I said you can shuffle money around with contracts that are particularly over the long term. It makes it easier. You can't do that with a free agent's money. So when a free agent joins, they are a set and forget. I'm talking about the guys who aren't. So if Cam Rayner signs a long-term contract, they can manipulate that.
And that
so
is
on
because clubs
Andrews,
were doing ridiculous things. It might have even been Joe Danaher himself, where you pay them these ridiculous figures for the first 2 years, which gets you a better compensation pick for the other clubs. So there's sort of some wheeling and dealing going on there. Question without notice to you. We've seen Jai Simpkin take over as sole captain of North Melbourne. I had a look through some of the clubs and thought, is there any other captaincy changes on the horizon? Why isn't Isaac Heeney the sole captain of Sydney?
Is it a problem that he's not?
I think he's the logical captain. Go and watch Sydney play, and if you knew nothing about football and you were sitting in the stands and you go, hey, tell me who you think the captain is of this club. It's Isaac Heeney. He's not Callum Mills. Callum Mills, with everything that's happened there and his body and the issues that he's had, it's time. I don't know, it's been 1 year, so it might be harsh. And Sydney have always had unique sort of leadership models with dual captains and so many captains and rotate, all of that.
So he should have lost the right to be captain with that.
He should have lost it then, and if it's not then, it should be now. Isaac Heeney and then Errol Goulden is the next captains of Sydney.
They were almost the co-captaincy pioneers, were they not? Sydney? I feel like they were
They had this
certainly the triple
thing.
captain.
Yeah, dating back to Barry Hall.
And the rotating captain.
Leo Barry and all sorts.
The Saints were a rotating captain club as well back in the...
For a bit.
Yeah.
Gee, I like one captain. I know hard to argue with Brisbane. They just won the premiership. But my preference is to have one captain. And I think a change should be on the horizon at Sydney, as harsh as that would be for Callum Mills. But he's got to focus on, is he even in their best 22 for a start? And I
think that's not a ridiculous
question. You
question.
can't have that hanging over your head if you're the captain of the footy club. That's a shadow over everyone. And he's got to get his body right and fight his way back into playing some good footy. Isaac Heeney should be the captain of that club.
Yeah, and it's never good when the captain is on the... And hopefully this isn't the case for him, but on the periphery, and we've seen it with Tom Jonas at your old club. It didn't play well, and it can be potentially a distraction for the group. Hey, GWS, Stephen Cornelio and this group at the Giants. So they're a bit like Brisbane last year. They're a group that has knocked and knocked and knocked. There's been near misses. There's been disappointment. Prelim losses in 16, 17, semi losses in 18, 21, the grand final loss in 19, the prelim loss by a point in 23. Top four last year, but the straight six exit. I'm not sure any of them are going to forget the fact they led the Premier by 44 points in that semi and were rolled. So Stephen Cornelio was asked about, I guess, the ongoing burning desire to get the breakthrough premiership yesterday. It's the reason why some of these guys, they just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. They see something there and they keep going.
They keep going. So. They do, and sometimes that happens and the rewards are there when that does. Look at Lockie Neal. 272 games is to get one after being there a couple of times, 2 clubs, all the individual accolades that you could ever wish for, and then you get it. How is this? But then there's others that keep fighting, and I keep looking at Travis Boak because I know him, and they're in a grand final in his first year, gets smashed. Never really getting up, and he's still going, nearly 400 games, because he's just got this hope that one day he'll be in a position to do it. And unfortunately, sometimes the game's heartbreaking and it doesn't happen. And, I think we would all like to see the Giants have success. I think they've been a very, very good side with a good program, with a lot of challenges, trying to get great people to that footy club and keeping their players and all of that. I'd love to see them win one. I absolutely would for players just like Stephen and Callum.
Early question without notice, because you've been pretty bold with your predictions. Saints maybe bottom 4, Hawthorn potentially the premiership favourites for you at the moment. Where do you have the Giants, who have added Jake Stringer, who, again, more positive press yesterday in that Cornelio press conference? Where do you have the Giants?
Somewhere between 1 and 6.
Okay, 6.
1 and 6 in that
Okay.
in that bracket. You look at the game style stacks up. That they would have learnt from some shocking performances in winnable games that have absolutely cost them. There was a premiership there for them to win 100% this year, and they coughed it up. But they are well coached.
They'll be right there, I reckon.
Strategically, they're sound, and the playing list is of the right demographic to be in them.